Eldest inherited everything and was expected to take care of the family. So Jacob's favor of Joseph was out of the ordinary, not expected, and created animosity among the brothers. Now, the coach of Colorado's football team, Deion Sanders, primetime, has made some very controversial comments about ranking his children. And in public, he said, and I quote, that we do not love our children the same. Of course, many people were up in arms concerning that statement. It is not the popular thing to say. We are to love our children exactly the same way. But I do agree with Dion. We simply do not. Now, I do not know how Dion shows his affection toward his children. I worked with an attorney once that I believe said it well. And what he said was, I have always loved my children, absolutely loved them, but I haven't always liked them. There are children who share the same interests as you may, and you will gravitate toward that one. It's a natural thing to do. And while it's not popular to say, it is a true statement. However, what Jacob did by making a special coat for the youngest child only caused animosity between the children and a parent, and a parent should never do that. Jacob's other sons truly felt they were losing their mind when their father clearly showed that Joseph was the favorite. This simply was not the natural order of things. Sadly, as you know, the story only gets worse. Let's go to verse 5. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. This is Genesis 37, 5, verse 5. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Well, Joseph is not making it any easier. But this is not totally Joseph's fault. As the youngest child, he did not see himself as being the favorite. His older brothers got to do things and go places he wasn't allowed to do because he was too young. Because of this, he saw them as being the favorite. I remember a scene from Richard, the Richard Williams story, when Serena signed herself up for a tournament because everyone was so focused on Venus. I remember an interview with Venus when she spoke of Serena's impatience to wait for her turn. How envious she was of Venus when she got her driver's license and was able to buy herself a car. They are only 15 months apart, but I am sure it felt like eternity to Serena, and that Venus was the favorite because of it. But in Joseph's case, he speaks of a dream where he is ruling over his brothers. Well, that went over like a lead balloon. Maybe he needed to keep that dream to himself. But back then, dreams were very serious, and people took them seriously. Some people still do today. So for him to flaunt it only made what was already a strained relationship with his brothers worse. So while Joseph thought he was losing his mind because his brothers did not believe him, His brothers thought they were losing their minds because they could not believe Joseph's gall. But it gets even worse down in verse 9. Let's go to 37, verse 9. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream. And this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told this, sorry, my thing just flipped again.
Could you make, excuse me, Mr. Rosalind, can you make Jerry the co-host? I'm having some difficulty doing that. Thank you.
He is now co-host. All right. Verse 10. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now, that's very interesting. I expected the brothers to be jealous, but Jacob, the father, kept the matter in mind. How would have I reacted if my teenager came to me and said, not out of anger or bitterness or strife, but in the normal course of a dream that he had had, that I bowed down to him? Would I be upset? I don't think so. It's just a dream. Would I keep the matter in mind? Probably not. Will I roll my eyes and say, you done lost your mind, boy? Probably. That sounds more like me. But after his parents' and brothers' reaction, how do you suppose Joseph felt? Do you think he felt, I'm going to show them? Do you think he felt, it was just a silly dream? Or do you think he felt unheard? That no one believed him or believed he could rule over them because he was the youngest. Do you think Joseph felt, am I losing my mind if I am dreaming such dreams not once, but twice? Is there something wrong with me? But being young, he was most likely thinking, I'm going to show them. But what happened next? His brothers threw him in a well to punish him for even thinking he could rule over them. His older brother Reuben planned to come back and save him, but by the time he returned to do that, his brothers had sold Joseph into slavery. What was Joseph thinking then? That maybe he should have never told his brothers of his dream? Have you ever done something for what you thought was the right reason and it blew up in your face? Think of the time that your intentions were completely pure when you did what you did or said what you said, and it only proved to blow up. You told something that you were quite sure they already knew to discover that they did not. Steve Harvey speaks of a 8-second delay button on his radio set that is in front of his co-host on the Steve Harvey Morning Show. And he has said that there is not a show that one of his co-hosts don't use that button, which basically ensures that whatever Steve just said does not go out on the airwaves. He is, excuse me, he is constantly told that there are things he simply cannot say. And he does not mean anything by whatever he was about to say. It's just a joke, but it would be found very offensive by some. Excuse me. And the fact that he does not mean anything malicious by it does not matter. Once it hits the air, there's no turning back. Matter of fact, I was watching the Today Show, and the co-hosts were telling their greatest fears. One says she feared closed spaces. She's claustrophobic. I understand that. One said he was afraid of heights. Al Roker said that he fears what he may say on TV that will have him kicked off the show the next day. That one little slip up could send him packing. Sadly, this is what happened to Joseph. His father made him a coat, which had nothing to do with him, but his brothers began plotting. And then he tells of a dream, and he sold into slavery. He truly must have thought that he was losing his mind. Well, Joseph remains faithful to God and becomes such a great servant that he becomes the Pharaoh's captain's at arms, Potiphar's right hand. Potiphar put Joseph in charge of all of his affairs. So while this was not the life Joseph was born into, he did make the best of a bad situation, which I think is a great lesson. There are times I thought I was losing my mind and God had totally forgotten I existed. But we cannot give up. We cannot put our head in the sand or pout and walk away. We must keep plugging away. It is not easy at all. At those times, it's tough just getting out of bed. I keep asking, why, Lord? What did I do? I apologize. I pray. But my mind is in a place that can no longer see the forest from the trees. That's when it's good to have some praying people around you. People who you can ask to pray for you without having to tell every detail. Because it's very difficult to pray when your mind is not right. Well, talk about asking the question why. Joseph is doing exactly what Potiphar wants him to do. However, Potiphar's wife decides she wants Joseph. Because of his devotion to Potiphar, Joseph refuses her advances. I am sure there was a point that Joseph knew that this would not end well for him. And regardless of what he tried to do to avert her advances, she was still there like a gnat buzzing around. Finally, she gave Joseph an ultimatum. Let's turn to Genesis 39:11. Genesis chapter 39, verse 11. Well, not Genesis 39:11. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants were inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "this Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." She kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him this story. "That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." When his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, This is how your slave treated me? He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. At this point, I gotta believe Joseph felt he was really losing his mind. He did nothing but receive a coat from his father and tell his family about a dream. He had been sold into slavery. He was a model slave and worked himself up to the ranks to Pharaoh's captain's house, who put him over his affairs. Not a bad gig for a slave. And he does a great job. But Potiphar's wife wants him, claims he attempted to take advantage of her, and he's thrown in the lowest levels of the prison. I would truly believe I must be losing it. I was sold into slavery and did nothing wrong. I was thrown into prison and I did nothing wrong. Why on earth would I serve a God who would do this to me? And in those moments, you think you're losing your mind. We do an assessment. At least I do. Okay, Rosalind, who did you offend? Do you need to make amends? Have you shirked on your prayer life? What are you doing that God would feel this is an acceptable trial for my actions? And when you are in the midst of a storm, you can no longer see clearly. Have you ever driven in a bad storm? Your windshield wipers are going as fast as they can, but you cannot even see the car in front of you. You begin to wonder if it's safer to pull over or to attempt to ride out the storm. While pulling over and just sitting in the storm is an option, if you cannot see the car in front of you, cars will not be able to see you parked on the side of the road. So that is not always the safest option. However, you have no idea how long the storm is going to last. But when the clouds clear and you can see the blue sky ahead, it is the most relieving feeling. Mount Everest is a huge mountain that people train to climb. It's about 29,000 feet and about 5.5 miles of trek straight up a snowy, ice-packed mountain. It takes a skilled climber over 2 months to climb to the summit. You have to be able to endure snow, ice, and cold. It is brutal, and many do not make it to the top, to the summit. They must turn around because the terrain is just too rough. However, the most interesting fact is that more people die on the way down than on the way up. You think once you've made it up, you have endured the toughest part, but actually, on the way down is the most treacherous part. I believe Joseph may have thought he had endured the toughest part when he was able to make it up the ranks as a slave. Joseph had endured back-breaking days with taskmasters who required you to work long days in heat or in cold. It was not an easy road for Joseph, but he did it with grace and was able to climb up to be the captain's Potiphar's slave over all of his affairs. At that point, I'm sure Joseph felt he had made it and his hard work had paid off. Then he was thrown in jail. How could this be? He had climbed to the top of the mountain. But Joseph was a model prisoner and once again rose to a place where he was the head, where the head guard put Joseph in charge of the prisoners. That shows amazing grace. Could I do that? Even in the midst of the storm, a storm brews that over and over again, I believe I have conquered the storm only to have tragedy strike again. I do wonder if Joseph ever wondered, what did I do to deserve this? I was a good son, and my mother and father really loved me. My brothers were jealous of me, but was it really that bad? Then I showed grace and did my job as a slave to the very best of my ability, but now I'm in jail. Is this what serving God looks like? Joseph was sold into slavery at the age of 17. He lived in Egypt for 13 years, between this time serving Potiphar and being imprisoned. At the age of 30, he was released from prison. For 13 years, Joseph was going through. I have had various trials and tribulations in my life, but I do not believe any of them lasted 13 years. As you know, once released from prison, Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream and rose to prominence. From there, his initial dreams came true, with his brothers and parents bowing down to him. But what can we learn from Joseph's ordeal? 1. Even in the tough times, believe in your dreams. When Joseph had his dream as a teenager, I'm sure he had no idea what they exactly meant. He had to grow and mature in order to understand what the dreams meant, good or bad. If you remember, he did interpret one of his prison mates' dreams and informed him that he would die. If you remember, he did but he did need to remain faithful to the dreams, even interpreting Pharaoh's dream. It's wonderful to tell a person that they will have 7 years of prosperity, but to also tell them that they will have 7 years of famine is a tough pill to swallow. Pharaoh could have had him killed just for uttering those words. But we must face the realities of life with grace, understanding that some decisions we have made may not have worked out the way we anticipated, but it is now up to us to fulfill our obligations with grace. And, like in Joseph's case, the situation may not have been created by us. It is simply not our fault, but it is our reality. We must keep persevering in the struggle, knowing God will not give us more than we can bear. 2. Life is going to throw us curveballs. It will not be a straight and narrow path before us, regardless how well we plan. And I am a planner. When going on vacation or anywhere actually, I do my research, determine how much it's going to cost, how long it will take to get there, what is there to do once there, how much do those activities cost, do I need to get tickets or make reservations in advance? If we have outdoor plans but it rains, what's our plan B? I attempt to account for all contingencies. However, there are always things I either did not know or didn't account for. So although I always have a little extra for those situations, there are some things I simply cannot fix. I need to put it in the hands of God to handle. And for a control freak, that is a very difficult task. Yes, I call myself a control freak. And number 3, God always has a plan. And as my pastor says, it's never a straight line plan. We like our own definition of orderly. It should work from A to Z, like the Amazon logo. Did you ever notice that the arrow under the Amazon starts with the A and ends at the Z? Not at the end of at the word Amazon, it stops at Z. Because we like our lives to be from A to Z. However, God may start at A and then go to W, and then go back to P, and then go back some more to C. And yes, at this point, we feel like we're moving backward instead of forward. We can handle C after A, but not after P. That's simply going in the wrong direction. Joseph started out with 2 loving parents. Then he was a slave, and then he was thrown into prison. And not just prison, but the deepest, darkest part of the prison. Can it get any worse? But after every rainstorm, there is a rainbow. And when you have been through it to the point where you truly think you're going to lose your mind, it is the most beautiful thing. At times, we all think, or at least I do, that we have everything under control. We are the captain of our ship and it is smooth sailing. I have a girlfriend whose son is excelling in his career. She went to visit him and she was exclaiming how proud she was of him and how God has shown favor on him in his career. Well, he shot back, God, I did this. She was more than shocked. She raised him in the church. Matter of fact, sent him to religious schools. So she didn't know what to do. She was at a complete loss. We discussed it. I explained to her that he'll be back, that something will shake him to realize that he is not in as much control as he thinks he is. Both my girlfriend and I worked in a very similar position, actually the same position he is in now. So we both know that in an instant, as well as he may think he is doing, it can all come crashing down. How valuable he may believe he is to the firm, he can walk in tomorrow and they can fire him, which we both know will rock him to his core. Sadly, the first person he'll want to blame is the person he gave no credit to. Why did God allow this to happen? Why did I get fired? Yet he never gave God credit when things were going well. We're really good at taking credit for the good, but placing blame on the bad. Or his change may come with the birth of his first child, that there was no way he and its mother could have done that, made that child on their own. Or maybe the death of someone very close to him, for him to realize just how short and precious life is, and the needs to take it, that he needs to take advantage of every opportunity God grants him. He is, as the phrase goes, a little too big for his britches right now. But God has a way of bringing us back around. Because if we want to take full credit for the highs, we better be prepared to take credit for the lows and take that credit all alone. I have had highs and thank God for each and every one of them. And I have had lows that I've had to lean on God to endure. So when I think I am at the end of my rope and that I am about to lose my mind, I remember the story of Joseph and just how he endured. And then I remember that weeping may endure for a night, and that night may be for a long time, but joy comes in the morning. Let's pray. Lord, your word is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. You are holy, and we praise and worship you. Thank you that we can live in your light and walk in your truth. Lord, there are times I truly believe that I'm going to lose my mind. Things are coming at me in all directions, and I have no idea which way to turn. Please give me the grace to remember the life of Joseph and know that whatever path I am on, however rocky and crooked it may feel, that you have the ability and will direct my path straight. May the things that you have revealed and thoughts that you have shared dwell in our hearts and stir us into action to do all we can for others. We ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. A couple of very quick announcements. Clubhouse will be this Saturday. It is live here in the church. Please go to our website for further details. Clubhouse are for kids 3 to 11, and it's from 4 to 6 p.m. Sunday services begin at 10:30 a.m. We are live in person in the sanctuary, or you can watch us on YouTube, or you can find the link on our website, www.communitynazchurch.org. We are located at 58 Cumberbatch Street in Wyandanch, and you can find all our announcements on our website, www.communitynazchurch.org, which also shows all programs, prayer times, service times, and methods to support the ministry. Remember, God does not answer our ask, but answers in our faith. And life can change in the blink of an eye, but remember, God never blinks. Be safe and be blessed. Have a great evening. Bye then.